I still remember exactly where I was standing when my phone buzzed that first time. I was leaning against the kitchen counter, half listening to a podcast about productivity hacks, my new car keys jingling in my hand. I just rolled the warranty papers into the glove box. The sun was dipping behind the houses across the street. I glanced down. The caller ID said Mom and Dad, and my stomach did that familiar little flip. Equal parts, what could they want? And hey, sweetie, Mom sounded off, too bright, like she'd practiced this note. We wanted to talk about your new car. I watched a droplet of juice roll down the side of my smoothie glass. Something clicked, an ominous, oh, here it comes feeling. Sure, I said, trying to sound casual. What's up? I heard Dad sigh on the other end, heavy enough to rattle my teeth. Look, son, we were thinking it'd be great if, well, maybe your brother could use it. I'm not kidding when I say it felt like the floor dropped out from under me. My brother Nate, 17 years old, still patchy with braces and school projects. He didn't even have his license yet. He'd never asked for a car. I'd been eyeing this exact model for years, saving every spare euro, betting my blood, sweat, and tears on it. And now my folks were acting like it was some family courtesy to hand it over. I don't really, I started, but Dad cut in. He needs to get to school. Public transport's unreliable, you know that. You can get another one later. Mom's voice, syrupy sweet, Dad's flat and insistent. I felt my heart rate spike. Look, I worked my ass off to buy this. I have insurance maintenance. That's not the point, Mom snapped. I could practically see her rolling her eyes. It's family. Family takes care of family. I pressed my lips together so hard they hurt. Mom, he hasn't asked for it, and I'm not giving up the car I paid for. Silence. Then a cold, clipped, well, that's selfish. Click. I dropped the phone and stared at the countertop, my smoothie forgotten, the jingling keys suddenly feeling like a weight around my neck. Selfish. I wanted to laugh at the irony. Me, selfish. The one who dug every penny from my savings so I could finally have something that was mine alone. But it wasn't funny. It was infuriating. Later that night, I sank into my couch, flicking through the TV channels as if searching for someone to commiserate with. Instead, I found a documentary about urban foxes. I watched a fox delicately tip its head, sniffing a discarded pizza slice, and thought, yeah, that's me, scraping by, only to have someone else decide I should give it up. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Mom. Hope you'll rethink. We love you. I stared at the words. Love me, then accuse me of selfishness for standing my ground. I typed back, I love you too, but boundaries are boundaries. No reply. The next morning, I drove to work in my car, hands tight around the steering wheel, the new car smell still crisp in the air. My office was in a drab converted warehouse, concrete floors, fluorescent lights, and my little marketing startup was bustling. Clients, deadlines, campaigns, the usual chaos, but my mind was stuck on the car. Every time I parked, every time I shifted gears, it felt like a reminder of the fight I hadn't asked for. I blew out a breath and told myself, today, I'll sort this. I had a plan. Sit down with my folks face to face, explain how wrong it was, lay out my finances. Show them the bank statements, whatever it took to prove this was not a frivolous purchase, and definitely not something I'd hand over. That evening, I rolled up to their house, a tidy two-story I'd grown up in, with Mom's begonias flanking the front steps. I hesitated by the door, steeling myself. My dad answered the knock, eyebrows raised. Hey, I said, can we talk about the car? Mom appeared behind him, arms crossed. The two of them exchanged a quick glance that could have short-circuited my confidence. But I took a breath and launched in. I want to explain why I can't give the car to Nate. Dad's eyes narrowed. We know it's yours, we just think it'd help him. It might help him, I admitted, but he's not the one who earned it. I went without things for years, late nights, second jobs, to save up. It's not about being selfish, it's about respecting what I worked for. Mom's face softened just a little. She said, we just worry for him. I get that, I said. I worry too. But he has options, a bike, public transit, our spare car. And if he really needs my car one day, I'll talk to him directly. But not because you're forcing me. They looked at each other again, and I realized they were ganging up. This was the old parental playbook: divide, confuse, guilt. I felt that old storm burning inside me. Protect what's mine, stand up, don't yield. Finally, Dad nodded. All right, he looked tired. We won't push it for now, but no buts, I cut in. I said no, let's move on. Mom's shoulders sagged. Okay, she turned away. I felt like I'd won and lost at the same time. They weren't thrilled, but they'd backed off. That night I drove home, chest tight, wondering if drawing a line was enough to fix things, or just the start of a bigger fallout. The days that followed were awkward. Family dinners were polite, almost painfully so. My brother Nate seemed oblivious to the drama. He talked about his upcoming exams, his weekend shift at the coffee shop, his crush on a girl in his math class. Good on him, he probably figured the car talk was just background noise. But I couldn't shake the tension every time Mom gave me that "you too can be so stubborn" look, or when Dad asked about my business with an extra edge, as if trying to see if his tactics had dented my resolve. One Saturday, I took the car out for a drive to clear my head. I ended up at a quiet overlook outside of town, the city lights twinkling below. I sat there for an hour, engine off, just listening to the wind. I realized something. This fight wasn't really about a car, it was about being taken seriously as an adult. Up till now, they'd still seen me as the kid who needed guidance, who should put family before himself. But I'd spent the last decade building something, a business, a life, and that demanded recognition. I slipped back behind the wheel and drove home, a plan forming. If they couldn't see my side, I'd show them, in the only way they respect. Results: I'd expand my business, make more money, take them out to dinner, and prove I'd arrived. Then maybe the car would stop being the battleground it had become. That Sunday, over pancakes, I cleared my throat. Mom, Dad, I've decided to reinvest in the company. I've found a new client who could triple our revenue this quarter. Their forks paused midair. I pulled out my laptop and showed projections, client testimonials, everything. By the time I shut it, Mom's eyes were bright. "That's amazing," she said, voice thick. "I'm so proud of you." Dad gave me a slow nod. "You're doing well." I smiled, but inside I felt cautious. Victory tastes sweet, but I knew tomorrow they might start the car conversation again. And this time I wasn't just defending plastic and metal, I was defending my hard-won identity as someone worth listening to. I finished my coffee and stood up. "I've got to head back to the office," I said. "Big week." "Be careful," Mom said. As I walked out the door, I glanced back. Their faces were soft, almost relieved, but I carried the echo of their demands with me. The car sat in the driveway, silent. To most people, it was just a sleek, red hatchback. To me, it was more. It was proof that I could carve out my own path, and that I'd fight for it, no matter who tried to take it away. I pulled out of their driveway with a knot still in my chest, but I forced myself to breathe. The ride home was quiet, no podcast, no music, just the hum of the engine and my own thoughts rolling like thunder. I knew one thing for sure: drawing boundaries felt good, but it didn't solve everything. If anything, it made the stakes higher. The next morning, I woke to a flood of emails. My phone blew up before breakfast. New leads, client updates, even a glowing note from my designer praising the revised logo. It was exactly what I'd hoped for. That rush of validation filled me with energy as I slid behind the wheel and headed into the office. For once, the car didn't feel like a battleground. It felt like a reward. I spent the day pitching, tweaking, hustling. By late afternoon, I'd secured a meeting with the new client I'd been eyeing for weeks, a regional chain that could catapult my business. I sprinted back to the car to grab my laptop, nearly tripping over the threshold in my eagerness. As I tossed the bag into the passenger seat, I noticed a sticky note on the dashboard in Mom's handwriting. "Good luck, honey. Proud of you." My stomach did another flip, this time warm. Maybe the dinner pitch had shifted something. That evening, I walked into the meeting prepared, nerves coiled but steady. The client's VP leaned back, brows raised at my projections, but by the end, she was smiling, sketching ideas on a napkin. They wanted to start next month. I walked out feeling 10 feet tall, visions of expansion dancing in my head. I stopped off at a gas station on the way home. While I filled up, I noticed the attendant giving the car a once-over, a respectful, impressed look. That fleeting approval stung a little, reminding me why I'd fought so hard for this. Because it wasn't just a car. It was evidence of what I could do when I set my mind to something. Back home, I found Nate in the driveway, crouched by our spare bike, mud streaked on his jeans. "Hey," I said, sliding off my jacket. "Weekend shift," he nodded, not looking up. "Yeah, got a double tomorrow." I hesitated. For weeks I'd given him space, this fight wasn't his, but something in his slumped shoulders pulled me in. "Want a lift?" I asked. "To the train station." He glanced at my car, then at the bike. "Oh, you don't have to. It's no trouble." I tried for casual. "Just drive you by, drop you off. Saves you hauling that thing all the way." He shifted, then stood. "Okay, thanks." As we climbed in, the car smelled like fresh leather and ambition. His silence was comfortable, not tense. I pulled away and met his eyes in the rearview mirror. "You good?" I asked. He shrugged. "Yeah, just busy." I wanted to unpack everything, the parental drama, the guilt trips, how I'd nearly lost my cool. But then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled paper. "I sort of need your help," he said, voice low. "I'm thinking about applying for that summer program, design stuff. Fees are steep, I might need some cash." Heat rose to my cheeks. My first instinct, flinch, push back. But then I pictured him at the city's design fair last year, eyes shining as he talked shop. He wasn't asking for my car. He was asking for advice, maybe a loan. "Let's talk numbers," I said, easing into the lane. "Show me what you need." His face lit up, a genuine thing that cut through weeks of family tension. We went over budgets, deadlines, mentors he admired. By the time we reached the station, I'd hooked him up with a contact at the program and arranged to help cover part of the fee. He slapped my shoulder. "Thanks, Jules." I said, "Anytime." And for the first time in days, driving away felt easy. Later that night, I got another ring from Mom. My pulse ticked upward. Old habits die hard, I answered. "Hi," I said. "Honey, is Nate home?" she asked. "Yeah, he's back from his shift." There was a pause. Then, "I'm sorry about the other day. You've worked so hard. We just wanted what we thought was best." I dragged a hand over my face. I know, and I'm sorry I snapped. It's not that I don't care about Nate, he's my brother. I just need people to respect my choices. Mom's voice cracked. We do respect you. We're proud. I think we just forgot sometimes that you're not a kid anymore. I felt tears sting. We all forgot, but we can remember now. I heard her sniffle. Let's move forward, yeah? Yes, we love you. Click. I sat on the edge of the couch, the settled quiet wrapping around me. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Over the next few weeks, my world was a whirlwind of pitch meetings, brainstorming sessions, and late-night strategy calls. The car remained golden, my sanctuary between home and the office. Mom and Dad no longer brought it up. Instead, they asked about our expansion, asked when they could brag to their friends. And Nate? He was knee-deep in design workshops, buzzing with excitement. He even took my car out one Sunday, with my permission, just to get materials from an art supplier 2 towns over. He returned it spotless, a shy grin plastered on his face. Thanks, Jules. One afternoon, I got a text from Dad. Could we take the car for a spin this weekend? We found a countryside route, thought you'd like it. I laughed out loud, surprised. They'd gone from wanting to take my car away to inviting me to share it. I shot back. Absolutely. Let's make it a family road trip. That Saturday, we piled in. My parents in the back, me at the wheel, Nate beside me with his sketchbook. As I merged onto the highway, the engine hummed under my hands. I glanced at Dad, who gave me a proud nod, and Mom, who leaned forward as if eager for the next bend. Nate tapped out a rhythm on the dash, lost in thought, and in that moment, the car wasn't just mine or theirs. It was ours, proof that respect and understanding could turn a battleground into a bridge. It wasn't the end of our story, but it felt like a milestone. The first time we'd all driven in the same direction, both literally and figuratively. And I knew, no matter what lay ahead, I'd carry this lesson forward, on every road, in every choice, and in every fight worth having. I woke up the next morning to the pale light filtering through my curtains and the distant rumble of traffic. My muscles were sore from the previous day's road trip, turns and straights, laughter and music, but in a good way. I stretched, swung my legs off the bed, and immediately thought of Nate, tucked away in his room, probably hunched over his sketchbook again. After a quick shower, I made us breakfast: eggs, toast, strong coffee, and carried 2 mugs into the living room. Nate was on the couch, headphones on, scrolling through designs on his tablet. He looked up when I set the coffee down. Morning, I said. He grinned. You make a mean cup. Only the best fuel for future graphic design overlords. He laughed, then tilted his head. Hey, about yesterday, thanks again. I feel like I can actually get this program done now. I took a sip, the warmth grounding me. You'll kill it. Just don't forget me when you're famous. He rolled his eyes, smile soft. Never. By mid-morning, I was back at my desk, drafting copy for a new campaign and feeling the momentum hum under my fingers. The office was quiet, Mondays always started slow, and I leaned back, thinking about what came next. The big client was on board, Nate was working on his portfolio, and my folks seemed to respect my boundaries, or at least weren't bringing up the car again. It felt like the world was shifting under me in exactly the ways I'd hoped. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mom. We're thinking of repainting the living room. Got any color ideas? Beneath it, a photo of swatches pinned on their wall. I smiled. Eco blue, warm gray, you name it, I had an opinion. I texted her suggestions, then glanced at my calendar. I had a pitch meeting later that afternoon. Enough time to grab lunch, run through slides, and maybe squeeze in a quick call with Nate about his application essays. I hopped in the car, feeling that familiar click, the bond between me, the throttle, and the road. Driving into town, I mapped out my mental to-do list, but halfway there, an idea struck me. Why not surprise Nate with a little design gig? I knew a cafe owner who was rebranding. A fresh student perspective might be just what he needed. I pulled over, whipped out my phone, and fired off a text. Got any free time? Got you a project. Seconds later, his reply. Heck yeah, lunch was a hurried salad at my favorite spot downtown. I grabbed my notebook and started sketching out project details while munching. By the time I finished, I had bullet points, timelines, even rough pay I could swing. I shot an email off to the cafe owner, CCing Nate. Meet him tomorrow noon. Done. The afternoon pitch went flawlessly. I flirted with nerves when the client's marketing director leaned in, but my slides were tight, my data rock solid, and by the end she was talking dates and deliverables like we were already on the clock. Walking out of that building, phone in hand with her enthusiastic email, I felt invincible. That evening, I limped back to the family home, my place and theirs somehow blurring into one now that I was here so often. Nate was waiting at the door, eyes bright. Dude, he said as soon as I stepped in. I just got the cafe owner's email. This is amazing. I drained my water bottle, nodded. Your turn to shine, I know you'll kill it. He punched the air. Thanks. Mom and Dad were in the kitchen, prepping dinner. I caught Mom's eye and she gave me a small, proud smile. Dad clapped me on the shoulder. No hint of the old tension, just warmth. I realized how far we'd come in a few weeks. how an ugly fight over a car had pushed us to redefine our roles in each other's lives. Over the next day or two, I oscillated between exhilaration and exhaustion. My own project deadlines loomed, Nate was buzzing with cafe sketches, and Mom needed opinions on cushions while Dad asked for business advice on his part-time consulting gig. It felt like our little ecosystem was humming, everyone contributing, everyone listening. Then Wednesday afternoon came, and with it an unexpected twist. My phone rang as I was packing up at the office. "Hey, Jules," it was Nate, voice unsteady. "Hey, man, what's up? Can you come pick me up?" Got locked out. I blinked. "Where are you?" The cafe." Pause. I got there early to drop off my sketches and left my keys inside. The door locked behind me. "I can't get in." I stifled a chuckle. Nate, the design whiz, undone by a door. "Okay, hang tight, I'm on my way." I jumped in the car and sped over. When I pulled up there, he was standing on the sidewalk, phone in hand, looking sheepish. I rolled down the window. "Need a hand?" He ran over. "Yeah, sorry, I feel dumb." I unlocked the passenger door. "Not your fault, doors are like that." We got inside, and he pulled out a folder of sketches, hand-drawn logos, color palettes, mood boards, all for the cafe's rebrand. I leafed through them, impressed by the cohesion and creativity. "These are legit," I said. "We'll send these over, and I'll coach you on the presentation." He exhaled relief. "Thanks." We drove back in companionable silence, windows down, early evening breeze stirring. It struck me that this, too, was part of the journey, the unlikely hurdles, the small rescues, the shared victories. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. That night after dinner, the four of us sat around the table. Mom sampling a new cushion fabric, Dad thumbing through my latest client report, Nate sketching in the corner, and me sipping tea. The conversation flitted from paint swatches to salary projections to where Nate would intern next summer. I caught my brother's eye, and he gave me a quick nod. I realized then that the car drama had been the spark, but this was the fire. A family finding new ways to support and respect each other. No more taking sides, no more guilt trips, just collaboration, empathy, and a little playful teasing. As I walked back to my room later, I thought about the road trip album I'd made for the car, songs and photos lining the dash. I decided I'd add a new track, one about surprises, about keys locked inside, about the messy, beautiful reality of family. It wasn't a smooth ride, but it was ours. I paused at the door and looked back. The lights in the living room were warm, laughter drifting out. I smiled and stepped inside, ready for whatever twist came next, because now I knew we'd face it together, boundaries intact, hearts open, and engines revving. That weekend's sunrise found me behind the wheel again, but this time I felt different, lighter, like the weight of that car fight had finally settled into something solid and real. I'd spent Saturday afternoon co-working at a little riverside cafe. Turns out Nate's designs had caught the owner's eye, and he'd even slipped me a free latte in thanks. Riding home with the windows down, I reminded myself how far we'd come. Monday at the office was a blur of briefs and deadlines, but I kept glancing at my phone, expecting the lockout text from Nate, or maybe a request for another favor. Instead, I found a photo message, two printed mock-ups of his cafe rebrand, taped to the cafe wall, with customers already pointing and nodding. Underneath, he'd scrawled, "Heard it's a hit. Thanks, big sis." I grinned so hard I startled my intern. By lunch, I had an idea. I booked a quick call with Mom and Dad, my car counsel these days, and pitched a little family challenge, a weekend road trip scavenger hunt. Each stop would be somewhere meaningful to us. Mom's childhood playground, Dad's first job site, Nate's art school campus, and my first office. The goal, capture a memory, snap a photo, share a story. I promised it'd be fun, a way to celebrate how we'd grown. They were in. The next morning, we piled in. Mom in shotgun with her camera, Dad navigating with an old map, Nate riding shotgun in back, sketchbook in lap, and me at the wheel with a full tank and a goofy grin. Our first stop, Mom's old elementary school, was a squat brick building with peeling paint. She hopped out, eyes bright, and narrated stories. How she used to get detention for daydreaming, how her best friend and she built a secret treehouse out back. We snapped her at the old playground, rusted swings swaying in the breeze. Dad's turn was next, an abandoned factory on the outskirts of town, where he'd had his first part-time job stacking crates. He stood in the empty bay, arms folded, voice thick as he talked about saving for his wedding ring, learning to drive that rusty company van. Nate sketched the broken windows, and Mom insisted on a family photo, all four of us framed by graffiti-tagged walls. At the art school, Nate led us through hallways lined with student work. He pointed out studios where he hoped to apply next year, rooms full of canvases, pottery wheels, neon lights where digital designers tinkered late into the night. He walked us to the sculpture garden and said quietly, "This is where I first felt like I belonged." I felt my throat tighten. Our final stop was my first office, the drab warehouse-turned studio where I'd pitched my first client. The place had grown into a shiny space 2 blocks away, but the old building still stood, windows cracked, weeds through the concrete. I parked in front and told them how I'd pitched that first deal, how thrilled I'd been when they said yes, how terrified I was to sign the lease, to take the leap. Dad put his hand on my shoulder and said, "You made something real here." Mom's eyes filled and Nate sketched my silhouette leaning into the window. We drove home as the sun dipped low, each of us quiet, digesting the day. Back in the driveway, Mom hugged me. "Thank you," she whispered. Dad ruffled Nate's hair. "Couldn't be prouder." Nate gave me a shy grin and said, "Best day ever." That week, the momentum carried me through every meeting and email. But Thursday night, just as I was shutting down my laptop, my phone buzzed. A notification from the financing app for my car. A midterm payment was due, and the balance had dropped to 3 months' worth. I stared at the numbers, then remembered how they'd once tried to make me give it away. This car had become more than transportation. It was proof that I could claim my space, protect my boundaries, and still invite my family along for the ride. I decided to celebrate. Friday evening, I invited Mom, Dad, and Nate to my apartment. I cooked oven-roasted chicken, spiced veggies, garlic bread, and set the table with candles. When they arrived, Dad brought wine, Nate a fresh sketch of the dinner spread, Mom a bouquet of flowers from her garden. We ate, laughed, then moved to the living room where I put on a slideshow. Photos from our scavenger hunt, screenshots of Nate's cafe rebrand, the client's congratulatory email. Their faces glowed with every memory. After dessert, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope for each of them. Inside were handwritten notes. To Mom, thanking her for teaching me resilience. To Dad, for showing me hard work matters. To Nate, for reminding me why boundaries exist to make space for growth. They unfolded the notes, eyes shining. Mom hugged me so tight I thought she'd bruise my ribs. Dad's throat bobbed and Nate just smiled, words failing him. Later, when they'd all gone home, I stood by the window, looking out at the streetlights. The car sat waiting in the drive, mine, yes, but also ours in some way. I ran a hand along its roof, remembering that first call with Mom, the anger, the guilt. It seemed so distant now, like someone else's fight. What remained was connection, respect, and a promise that no matter what life threw at us, we'd face it together with open hearts and clear lines. I closed the curtains and climbed into bed, heart full. My business was thriving, Nate's future looked bright, and my parents, well, they'd learned to see me as the adult I'd become. Boundaries still mattered, but so did love and laughter and the stories we carried. And I knew, as I drifted off, that this was only the beginning of a journey far more meaningful than any road we'd driven. That week after the family dinner felt different, like we'd crossed an invisible line together. Monday morning, I slid into the driver's seat of my car and caught my reflection in the mirror, calmer eyes, shoulders squared in a way I hadn't noticed before. I started the engine, and the dashboard lit up like a promise. New payment down, 3 left. I smiled, thinking about how much more than a car it had become. By Wednesday, my business had already started to reap the benefits of the recent wins. The regional client signed the contract, Nate's cafe rebrand launched to great feedback, and Mom and Dad, well, they turned into my biggest cheerleaders. That morning, I found a text from Dad at 7:30 a.m. "Just read your pitch deck again. Solid work. Proud to call you my daughter." I tucked my phone away and drove into the office with my usual confidence dialed up a notch. I spent the day on calls, negotiating budgets, coordinating with the design team, and mentoring a junior copywriter who reminded me of myself a few years back, hungry, a little uncertain, but full of potential. When I closed my laptop at 6 p.m., I felt that familiar hum of purpose. I decided to swing by the cafe before heading home and check on Nate's first week of work. Pulling up, I saw him behind the counter, carefully pouring latte art into a cup. He looked up, caught my eye, and gave me a thumbs up. The little bell above the door jingled as I stepped in. "Hey," I said, leaning against the counter. "Hey," he grinned, wiping his hands on his apron. "Order?" I shook my head. "Just checking in." He set the cup down. "It's been busy. First weekend got crowded thanks to the new logo outside." He pointed to the window where his design, simple, bold lettering surrounded by a tiny coffee cup icon, drew stares. People actually came because they saw it. I took a sip. Rich, smooth, just like success tastes. That's fantastic. We fell into easy conversation. His hopes for the menu design next, my plans to hire that copywriter full-time. It felt natural, collaborative, instead of the tension of weeks before. I realized how much I'd missed this, the synergy of family and work intersecting without friction. That night, back at my apartment, I pulled out the envelope I'd prepared months ago in case I ever needed it, the one with that first phone call transcript typed out, all caps in anger, lines scribbled in the margin. "You're selfish." Click. I stared at it, incredulous that it felt like ancient history now. I tossed it in the recycling bin. No more fuel for old fights. Instead, I opened my laptop and drafted a personal essay, my first real piece about setting boundaries, written from the heart. I titled it, "My First New Car Taught Me More Than Driving." I wrote about the absurdity of parental guilt trips, about learning to stand up for myself, and about finding unexpected allies in my family once I did. When I finished, I posted it on my company's blog and shared it with a few thoughtful communities online. Within hours, the post had comments rolling in, people thanking me for giving voice to their own car or boundary dramas, others asking for advice. I realized how universal this felt. Everyone wrestles with the push and pull of family expectations versus personal ambitions. The next morning, I woke to an inbox full of replies. A journalist wanting to feature my story, a fellow entrepreneur asking if I'd speak on a panel about work-life balance, and most touching of all, a private message from Nate. "Hey Jules, just wanted to say thanks again. Seeing you handle everything inspired me to apply for a scholarship. I got an interview next week. I wouldn't have done it without you." My chest tightened and I blinked back a tear. I typed back in seconds, "Proud of you. You've got this. Always here if you need anything." I closed the message and stepped outside, breathing in the morning air. The car gleamed in the driveway, waiting. But I realized it didn't matter if I drove or not. What mattered was everything that had happened on the way. That evening, as the golden hour cast long shadows across the street, Mom and Dad surprised me with an envelope addressed to me in Dad's neat handwriting. Inside was a set of keys, my grandmother's old Volkswagen Beetle, restored and repainted, theirs to gift. A note from both of them read, "Because life is about giving when you can and keeping when it matters. Love, Mom and Dad." I closed my eyes, feeling both the weight of their gesture and the lightness of how far we'd come. I hugged the Beetle keys close, then held the envelope out to them. "Thank you," I whispered, "but this is yours too, for family road trips back to the old factory, wherever." Mom's eyes filled, and Dad's mouth curved in that proud half-smile I'd come to recognize. Nate appeared at the door, sketchbook in hand, and we shared a quiet moment. Siblings, parents, four people who'd learned how to love each other better. That night, I drove the Beetle to the overlook outside town, the same spot I'd sat in my hatchback weeks ago. I parked, stepped out, and leaned against the roof as city lights flickered below. I thought about the journey. The fight over the car, the late-night arguments, the breakthrough conversations, Nate's first design gigs, the family scavenger hunt. Each memory felt like a mile marker on the road of growing up. I took a deep breath, turned the Beetle's key in the ignition, and rolled down the window. The engine sputtered to life with a gentle lurch, different from the crisp roar of my newer car, but no less alive. I smiled, put it in first gear, and drove down the winding path toward home. Because now I knew that boundaries and generosity aren't opposites, they're the two wheels that keep you moving forward. And with that, I felt ready for whatever the next turn might bring.